Hey folks, I don't have the Insta360 going because it's kind of raining outside. In hindsight, it's probably going to be raining literally all the time because it's Seattle. But I've been finding even with RainX, it's not doing so well. And really just kind of takes away from the video when you have water droplets on the entire surface of the front camera. So I'll have to come up with a better solution, but on a day like today where I know it's wet out, I won't use it. We're going to go to Reddit for a topic. This is one, I'm surprised I haven't talked about this yet, so I think it'll be pretty helpful for at least some people because I don't think that this situation is that rare. And the situation that this person was writing about is, in their case, there's a geography discrepancy, and that's going to sort of amplify the challenge that they're facing, but I don't think it's the root cause of it. Some people, I scanned the comments, some people were saying, oh, this is absolutely this type of situation, and I disagree, but we'll talk about it. So the idea is that there is a person, and this person is in a foreign country, doesn't matter which country, but their main sort of counterpart is based in the United States. Like I said, I don't think that this part is actually the root of it, but then this person goes on to say that, you know, they're on this team, they're relatively new, but things are going pretty well for the first 6-8 months or so. So they're kind of getting in the groove of working in the code base, being productive. And then the next project that they're on for their team, they actually need to work in someone else's code base. So a different team essentially owns this code base. And for this individual, they are going to have to do work directly in that code base. And again, this is where we have the cross-geo thing coming in because that other team is in the US. Now, apparently what had happened was they put up a pretty big pull request and I guess was reviewed and ended up breaking a bunch of stuff that's pretty critical. But now it's not shipped to production. It's not like everything in prod went down and everything's on fire kind of thing. But I think they're still in this situation where they're feeling like, oh man, I really screwed up. And the part that I was kind of glossing over because I don't think that it's the most important part about what I want to talk about is I think they might have been saying now they feel like they're in hot water with their manager. And I don't know if that's how they feel or if they had feedback on this. But I've made plenty of videos about trying to have clear, open conversations with your manager. It's not what I want to focus on for this one. So what we're going to try and focus on is how can you be productive when your expectation that you've been given is that you need to go do work in someone else's code base. Okay, that's what we're going to focus on. So a quick reminder before I dive into my perspective on this is that if you want your questions answered, leave them below in the comments. I'm happy to try and get to them, make videos on it. And if you have something that you want to be kept anonymous or you want to write something lengthier, please look for Dev Leader on social media. That's my main YouTube channel as well. And you can feel free to write me there. Or Nick Cosentino on LinkedIn. My profile should be open to send messages to. Plenty of people have taken advantage of that. And I feel like based on their responses that they're thankful that they had the opportunity, so I'm trying to make that available for folks. And one more little plug, if you want your resume reviewed, my main channel, Dev Leader, has a playlist for resume reviews. Currently, it's not paywalled or anything. I suspect if the demand keeps going up, eventually I will, because it will bankrupt me, because it costs me money to review resumes. Because YouTube ad revenue doesn't do it. Okay. So for context, I actually have experience in this type of situation, not a cross-geo situation, but like I said, I don't think that this is the root cause. A quick note that based on now that you've heard the scenario, a lot of people were saying, oh no, what's happening here is the US company is trying to sabotage this person because it's very clear that the company itself is trying to outsource all the dev work to India or wherever, and therefore it's the devs are trying to push back on it. And I simply just like think that's far too big of a leap to start making assumptions about. I'm not saying that's not in the realm of possibility, but like, we could literally take this exact scenario and remove the geography discrepancy, and this would still be a problem that people encounter and we should talk about, which is why I'm approaching it that way. So in my experience, I had, before Microsoft, the startup that I was working at, one of the teams I was managing had gotten through our backlog of essentially everything that needed to be done for our product at the time that was a priority. And there was a larger company initiative that had a lot more priority and we needed more help on it. So my team was brought in to help assist with that. So we basically parked all of our efforts in the work streams that we were doing, and because literally the biggest priority was helping ship this big product launch. So our team was brought in. We were we were named the Expendables, like the movie, and it was kind of, I don't know, we thought it was fun because it was like based on our humor and stuff, it was like, oh, I guess our work doesn't matter, right? Like, okay, put us in, like toss us into the fire, like, we are truly the expendable team, but like we all work really well together, and the thing that motivates us the most, or that team at the time, when I say us, I'm talking about that team, is basically give us a hard challenge that like we don't think can be solved. So in this case, how do we help ship this product that's on a tight schedule? Like, give us mission impossible and we're going to go do it. So in this case, what we had to do was go build inside of another team's code base that the other team primarily owned. And I think I've told this story before on Code Commute. So if you've watched all of the episodes, which I find hard to believe if you have, but if you have, you might have heard it. And essentially what had happened was very similar to what this person described, which is you make changes in someone else's code base, and even if they review it, you end up breaking stuff. And then what happens is, at least in our case, what was happening was we would go land features, and then between us landing it and the next sprint for that team, like when they had to go do work building on top of it, they would be like, oh, you broke a bunch of our stuff. So our next sprint, we would spend fixing bugs while they were making changes, and then they would break our feature. So we kept every other sprint, we were basically just repairing the work that the other team did. So, in terms of being productive, it was extremely counterproductive at least in terms of efficiency, because we were spending so much time fixing each other's broken changes. So eventually, and this is kind of like like in hindsight, this should have happened far sooner. But eventually what we did was we said, look, like, this is getting ridiculous. We're wasting so much time going back and forth like this. Even with people signing off on the changes, it's not like we were like stealthily trying to like sabotage their code base. But we said, how do we help make sure, like, this is the mindset, how do we help make sure that other people can touch our code and not risk breaking all of it? And for us, we added a ton of test coverage. And for some people, you might be saying, well, that's not going to work. They'll change the test, blah, blah, blah. But one of the things about having more test coverage, and especially when it goes up for review, is if we see the tests changing, right? So someone makes changes to the code, and then we see the test changing. We know that if we had really good, when I say coverage, I don't just mean specifically lines of code. I mean enough coverage that gave us confidence on the critical things. If we see those tests changing, then they're changing expected behavior. Now, based on everything we've discussed, do we expect that behavior to change? Because if not, there we go. Like, you're about to introduce a bug. Now, this isn't a bulletproof solution, because for anyone to claim that just having enough tests is going to mean you never have a bug, it's a false statement. There's always possibility for escapes. And if that's the case, like, you just can't make that claim. But it's, for us, it really, really helped to make sure that we could build confidence in letting other people touch our code base. It got to the point where we adopted that mentality beyond just the expendables team that we had. And we said, when we build code, like, anyone should be able to come into our code base. Not that we're not going to review the code or try to make sure it's aligned with our vision, but anyone should be able to come in and not have to worry that they're going to break absolutely everything, because all they should have to do is run the suite of tests and at least know what's being affected if a behavior is changing that's expected. So that was something that we truly adopted and tried to live by. It's not that we had that scenario happen often, but it's something that, like, it was such a painful experience for us that we were like, we have to make this better. So to go beyond my experiences and address what this person's going through, it's right that I mean, in my opinion, it's right that they're feeling frustrated, because it sounds like, and we don't have all the detail, but if this was first of all, it's a big change. I think we got to come back and revisit this in just a moment. But when this code lands and it's been reviewed by a team, they've signed off on it. They've said, we agree that this is okay. Like, what we don't know is, like, well, what did the test coverage look like? Did they go make this, like, a change that's like 1,500 lines in total, and then no tests were updated? They only added tests. There were no tests in the first place, so there was nothing that could have showed regression. Like, we don't have any indicators of that. But my guess is that if this was a critical thing that broke once this code landed, is that there are insufficient tests. And I say that, again, not to talk about, like, lines of code that are covered necessarily, but I mean the scenarios that are critical to cover with automation and regression tests are simply not covered adequately. Unless it's a completely fluke chance that how this person made a big change like that happened to touch some edge case and happened to show up, which I think is going to be pretty unlikely. So in my opinion, number one here is, like, this is why I told this story, my own experience, is that people need to be in this position where they're building in a way that other people can come into the code base and make changes. Again, I'm saying this not to be like, hey, like, we'll just cover our eyes, you can do whatever you want. No, it's going to get reviewed. It's going to get reviewed, but it's that people should have confidence when they're making changes in the code base. That's what you want to be able to support, not that you're always going to be having that happen. So I'm just trying to explain why it's a team philosophy that I like to adopt. So I think that's lacking in this particular case. Number two, and this is maybe what I should have started with, is, like, when you have a really big pull request like that, it's 1,500 lines, this person's new to it, I think that there was probably a lot of missed opportunity. And so I'm going to put, in terms of blame, air quotes here, maybe blame, I'll skip that word. I'm going to put some responsibility on the person that wrote this post on Reddit and say, look, like, if you had a 1,500 line pull request go up, what I would have recommended that you do is basically have someone on that team that you could have been designing stuff with or getting their sign off along the way. So there's different ways to do this. It could be whether it's a design doc to get feedback early, if it's draft pull requests. So basically you keep a draft open and you keep updating it so that someone can see the changes coming in before it's like, okay, it's finally grown to 1,500 lines. Now let's add a few people from the team and hope to God that they understand all the stuff I'm touching. For people that have been on pull requests that are large, there's memes about this, right? It's like, 2-line code change, you get like 50 comments about people picking it apart. But then when it's like, a 2,000 line code change, it's like you get a comment that's like, you got extra white space here. Like no one's spending the time to go review these really big things because they're like the cognitive load is too great for me to do anything meaningful. I'm not saying that's a good thing, by the way. I'm just saying like there seems to be this skew towards that. So I would have recommended something like a running draft pull request to get some feedback as they're going. Pick any other mechanism you want if you don't like that, but some way to be getting sign off or agreement, visibility along the way. What could have happened too is if there were early conversations about this, and this isn't, again, it's not a bulletproof solution, is how do we take something that is potentially going to be a very large change, potentially, and making sure that we can break it down into something that can be delivered in smaller increments, right? Not always, like, one could argue that, yeah, sure, if you put a lot of effort into every change, you can make this happen. It's not always feasible. It's not always going to be optimal to do it this way. I would encourage people to think about it this way. Smaller, granular commits, yes. But, I've certainly done big refactors and I'm like, well, this is a monster. And for me to have gone and broke it down into smaller pieces would have almost felt like more work. Sometimes though, and I'll just say it, sometimes it is worth it to have done the extra work, right? Instead of trying to do it all at once to like save time in terms of how much you can land or how much rework you do, sometimes it's worth breaking it into smaller pieces. It might take you a little bit longer to do, but now you have a setup where, if you need to revert parts of it or incrementally, you can go to having more, things being executed in production or in other environments or whatever. It might afford you better confidence as you're building. Okay, so the other thing, and this is another huge one, I guess, is like this overarching theme of like it's a different team, right? Soft skills. I can't say soft skills enough on this channel or on Dev Leader. It's something that people, I don't know, like I feel like we don't pay enough attention to these things. So if it feels like I'm a broken record talking about it, it's because I think it's so important and doesn't get attention that it deserves. But in this type of situation, if this person's not feeling supported by this partner team, whether that's not timely reviews on things, whether that's not engaging on designs and stuff like that to get sign off early, and they're just like, well, man, I have to get this stuff done, like, and I'm going to keep moving. Making sure that you can find ways to make that happen, right? That could be, building some sort of trust with the other team, finding a person that you can start to build that with so you have a good contact there. That could be, if that's not working and you're struggling with that, having a conversation with your manager about getting that support on the other team. There are so many things that we could explore here, but my takeaway, because I'm pulling up to CrossFit, is that if you're in this type of situation and you're struggling to get that buy-in from the other team, bring visibility about that to your manager. It's not necessarily that they're going to be the ones that solve the problem for you. They might give you some tips or coach you, but bring visibility to it, because if you need help, this is the kind of support that like your manager can guide you through. They might say, you're going to go figure this out, but here are some tips. Or maybe they're talking with you for a while about this and it's not progressing, and your manager's like, okay, I have to go talk to their manager. Or I've been in situations where we literally need to go through leadership on either side because it's across organizations and they have different priorities. So it's not for lack of trying. It's just that like they have literally different priorities and they're not going to align. So I'm at CrossFit, so I'm going to sign off here, but I hope that helps. If you have questions about this type of scenario or you've experienced it, let me know in the comments. It's a challenging one, but I hope some of those tips help. So I'll see you next time.